Howdy everyone, we're Sarcy here, and today we're looking at the Nintendo Switch version of Payday 2 in 2023. This is the first of the more modern Payday 2 releases we'll be looking at, and I say modern very lightly because even the most up-to-date console version is old as shit, with none of them having anything past 2017, maybe early 2018. Now this version is also the last console version to be releasing in February of 2018, and normally it makes sense to look at the Crapwave edition on PS4 and Xbox One first, as they did come out in 2015. But as of this day, they're also much closer to the PC version than the Switch one is. But I'll get more into that in a bit. As is the usual, we'll be looking at how many people are still playing this, and also take a look at the performance of this port. But before that, I'm going to briefly go over a couple of things that are different between this version and the Crapwave edition, not content-wise, but actual features. First off, one down difficulty is still a thing. In a later update, it was changed to death sentence with the optional toggle to have one down, meaning you can only go down once before going into custody. Not really much of a big deal, more so just a difference in name. The second difference is actually my biggest issue with this version, and that is that you still only get 2 bot teammates. In a later update, you not only got the normal 3 bots, but you could choose what characters came with you, give them a custom mask, weapons, and assign them special abilities like the Inspire skill where they can shout at you to revive, as well as boosts to your other stats that are increased based on how many bots are currently in play. Not only this, but you could throw a loot bag at them and they would actually somewhat carry it for you. I say somewhat because they could still drop it for the stupidest of reasons, but they were at least useful now, meaning you wouldn't have to one by one sluggishly carry bags by yourself. The Xbox One and PS4 versions got this update, and in my opinion, this would have been the most important thing that the Switch version could have received, maybe only beaten by the desync update. So how many people are still playing this in 2023? Unfortunately, not too many. There's certainly more people on this version than the Xbox 360 version, I think, but definitely not as many as the PS3 one, however. There are times, of course, where you'll get full lobbies, but most of the time when I hop on, there's little to no people actively playing, and there's a few reasons for this. The main one I'm going to blame is that this version never goes on sale. It's still a full $50 digitally, and used physical copies are not cheap, still going for around about a minimum of $40, with some listings even being above the initial $50 release price. This is definitely one of those games where, in my opinion, if you didn't buy this on or around the launch date, I recommend just not buying it. Hell, if I didn't already have it, even with it being my favorite game, I wouldn't buy it either at this point. It's just not worth the price, especially given my next point. This version never got updated. Not once. Besides maybe what I believe was the typical few megabyte update that games usually get that changes absolutely nothing, this version never got any updates. And not only that, but even when it launched, it was still far behind the Crapwave edition on Xbox One and PS4 in terms of content. I looked it up before making this video, and the Switch version is only on update 117, the most wanted update that released way back in June 2017. The only thing it originally had that the other versions didn't was the briefly exclusive character Joy, which it didn't take long at all for her to not only come to PC, but even the Crapwave edition on Xbox and PlayStation. And the only other thing that this version had over the other consoles is that the DLC that later released to the Crapwave edition and cost money is included on the Switch one for free, but you can already frequently pick up all of the DLC on the other versions for under $10, so that's not really saying much. Now moving on to performance, I'd say this might be the worst running version, only rivaled by the PS3 version. Capped at 30 FPS just like its other current gen counterparts, it struggles to maintain even that, especially on larger heists with bigger maps, even more so on heists with drivable vehicles from what I've noticed. Take the biker heist for example. It runs about average, with average being the typical frame rate you'd expect from a Switch game. However, at the end of the heist when you hop on a bike and ride to the escape spot, the frame rate noticeably tanks and it stays on the lower end for the remainder of the ride. side. The game runs better on simpler heists, especially base game heists like Mall Crashers, but even there, the frame rate isn't always perfect. I would say that this is due to how weak the Switch is, but given Overkill's consistent history of not caring about any of their console releases, and not just with Payday 2, they're definitely partially to blame in terms of optimization, especially considering how they weren't even willing to port this themselves and instead handed it off to Sumo Digital, whom I wouldn't be surprised if they had a hard time handling the diesel engine, which is what Payday 2 runs on for anyone who is unfamiliar with that. So besides the frame rate, there is one little issue that I'd like to point out, one of which I don't think any other version has, at least not that I remember. Sometimes when you pick a lobby to join, it'll just sit there forever waiting to connect. Now, normally on any other version of this, you'd simply hit cancel and you'd be able to stop it. This version, however, will require you to restart the game. It doesn't happen often, but it's annoying when it does. So unless you already own this game, I can't recommend playing it. Hell, even pirating it and playing it on a hacked Switch would be pointless since this version doesn't have the Better Bots update and you can't play online with others. Now, if you already have this game, by all means play it. I still play it plenty, with it actually being my most played Switch game. It's still fun, people are still somewhat playing it, and it's kinda neat to be able to play Payday 2 on a handheld, even though the Steam Deck exists now and you could just have the real Payday 2 on there. However, if you don't already own it, I'd advise against buying it. And I really hate having to say that, because if it weren't for the price, I'd say it's definitely worth owning on the Switch if you find yourself frequently playing the console. Even as a very inferior version of the game, this may just be the best first-person shooter on the Switch, and that's not just me being biased. It doesn't really have much competition in the FPS genre beyond Doom, Wolfenstein, Rico, Earthfall, and a bunch of other older generation games like Star Wars The Public Commando and Metro 2033 on the platform. There's hundreds of hours of content in this game, and yeah, it doesn't run perfectly, but it runs about the same as any other game runs on the Switch. And if it actually received good sales like other FPS titles that frequently receive single-digit dollar sales, I definitely recommend it. But since you can get the other console versions that have way more content and at a much cheaper price, even being available on Xbox Game Pass and PlayStation Plus, I'd say if you're looking to try this on a console, don't get the Switch version. And that will do it for this video. Next up, we'll be covering the Crapwave edition on Xbox One, which is my least favorite way to play this game, and you'll soon find out why. Until then, this is Warsarcy on the Game Clips channel, and I'm out.